Hey everyone, welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Get ready to travel back in time to 1986, the year when Microsoft went public, the Oprah Winfrey Show was first syndicated, and when Wayne Gretzky was at the top of his game with the Edmonton Oilers, breaking his own NHL record for the most assists and the most points in a season. These are records, by the way, that he still holds to this day. Now, let's take a listen to what the House was talking about.
The next item of business will be oral questions. The member for Brantford.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government won't answer order paper questions. Let's see if they can answer verbal questions. Mine is to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. The minister knows that 1,500 plus workers at the Goodyear plant in Etobicoke are awaiting to see their fate, wanting to know if they are still going to have jobs or whether this government has any plans to provide new jobs for them. This waiting is taking a strain. 2 of those workers have had nervous breakdowns and are hospitalized because of this situation. We understand that as of this morning, no politician, no minister of the Crown, and no official of the Government of Ontario has contacted the union at that plant to offer any plans for assistance, any retraining, any employment programs of any sort. The only call they've had, I am told by the President of the Union, is of federal assistance being offered by the federal member for Etobicoke Lakeshore. And so my question, Mr. Speaker, is this. Are you prepared, Mr. Minister, to tell those workers and to tell this House now what plans you have for the future employment, re-employment, or retraining of those 1,553 workers?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we just take it that the jobs haven't been lost yet, and we are still continuing to deal with the company to see what we can do. As of yesterday, I wrote to Mr. Robert E. Mercer, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, asking him that he consider, first of all, building a new plant. Secondly, whether or not they would extend the closing. Some of the other matters that you mentioned have been under discussion by both myself and the Minister of Labour and our officials as to how we can best help them if they are laid off.
Supplementary, the member for Brantford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister not think that the workers have a right to know what plans you have in mind and what you might be able to do for them? I want to read you a brief quote, Mr. Minister. The Union President, Dave Burrell, said in contrasting the situation today with the situation in 1981 when that plant was threatened with closure. Mr. Burrell said that in 1981, the government came forward with good ideas and financial assistance which turned things around. The workers at the time were confident and had good feelings. This time, there is a lot of hostility. The province didn't try to do anything until it was too late, and now we don't know if it's going to be successful. By way of supplementary to the Minister, what specific programs, by way of retraining through the Ministry of Skills Development, by way of re-employment, can you offer these workers? Your good assurances are not enough. What are you prepared to do for them now?
These are matters that have been under discussion by our officials, and I don't believe that you have been properly briefed. I believe that you will find that the Minister of Labour met with the union either later this week, would have been earlier this week.
Final supplementary.
I have to take the union president at his word, Mr. Minister, that he has heard nothing. I want to ask you, by way of a second supplementary, this. Under the $100 million Ontario training strategy that was announced by your colleague, the Minister of Skills Development, this fall, our understanding is that the training strategy that was in place by the previous government for older laid-off workers has been discontinued, that the only training programs you have now for older workers are those for which the company applies when those workers are going to continue employment with the company. That is not the case with these people, or we fear that it will not be the case with these people. will you put into place a strategy and training programs for the re-employment of older laid-off workers? It's worked well and served this province well in the past. Why will you not reintroduce it and ensure that it will in the future?
As I stated before, we will explore all possibilities of trying to keep that plant open before we get into finalization of some of these matters which have been discussed by our officials.
New question, the member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minister is exploring possibilities whilst workers are being laid off of the job. That's the reality of this
And your
government's
question
performance.
is to which minister? Which minister?
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Industry, otherwise known as the Minister in charge of the deindustrialization of Ontario. And it has to do with the softwood lumber matter. Can the minister indicate to this House, because he's been strangely silent on this matter for some time, can he indicate to the House what documents have been filed with the Department of Commerce in Washington, and in detail what Ontario's position is with respect to the Countervail decision, the preliminary decision? What elements of that decision are you challenging, and what documents have you filed?
Minister?
First of all, I might tell as I told the member yesterday, I don't think you've ever had as many new plants established in the province of Ontario as you have over the last year and a half. The treasurer just brought me up to date also, but there are 157,000 new jobs that have been created in the province, more than there were in the previous year, so that's how well the province is doing. As I have stated in this House before, we have just been through the verification process where we have had people from the Commerce Department that are up here. We have been working very diligently with them and have been supplying them with information that we feel is pertinent to this case. At the hearing that will be held on December the 4th, the industry will be represented by their lawyers there. We will also be in attendance, and if there is not a termination agreement, we will be filing our information before the December 14th deadline, which is the time that it has to be filed by.
Supplementary?
The minister knows full well that under the preliminary decision, your position for the December 4th hearing had to be filed by November the 24th. The truth is you haven't filed anything. You've got one letter from the Hogan Law Firm in Washington that says that they are representing through Blake Castles the Government of Ontario, and no specifics about what elements in the preliminary decision you're challenging. My question to the minister is, you went along with the 8 to 10% solution, knowing that it would cost 500 to 1,000 jobs. Can you tell me now how many jobs are going to be lost with the 15% solution? Can you tell me how many jobs are going to be lost and what you're going to do to help those workers?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, we are just of the opinion, as we have been in the past, that we will continue to work very diligently right through the whole process to make sure that jobs are not lost.
About jobs, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Final supplementary.
Final supplementary.
Final supplementary. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is this Premier failed in Vancouver, failed to bring the other provincial governments and the federal government along with Ontario's position. He failed because he lacked credibility. He doesn't even have credibility with his Quebec friend, Premier Bourassa. Now, one government supports Ontario's position. That's because this Premier failed on behalf of the workers of Northern Ontario. Now, my question to the Minister of Industry is this.
Order. Order. You said you were going to say to the minister.
No.
Oh, come on.
Order. Order. Final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister indicate to this House and the people of the province of Ontario in detail, including representatives of the workers of Nakina, Long Lac, and Terrace Bay, can he indicate what arrangements and what negotiations he's had with the federal government with respect to the 15% tariff imposition? And what's the impact going to be on Ontario? How is that amount going to be covered? What negotiations have you undertaken to help the workers of Ontario?
Minister?
Just as before I answer that question, I did want to tell the previous questioner that Mr. Rye met with the rubber workers unions at Goodyear on Tuesday morning. So that meeting was held with. I don't know where the member from Cochrane has been over the last month or so. We've been talking about these matters. I mean, it's in the paper every day. It's on the radio. It's on the TV. It's on there what this Premier and this government has been doing to fight for those people. Let me just read you something. Let me just read you something. You may feel that way because you're in the opposition. You're using it politically. But here's the wire from the E.B. Eddy Forest Products Limited. It reads, "As one of Ontario's major lumber producers, we want to thank you for the stand that you've taken on the lumber countervail issue at the Vancouver conference."
The member for Lake Nipigon would like to ask a question, if you would allow it. Good. New question.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. With all due respect, Mr. Minister, to get an answer from you is worse than pulling teeth. And then you go and blame the previous administration. When the serious is so appalling and shocking, we have people in the gallery here that have spent thousands of dollars to come and tell you today that they are losing their jobs. Yesterday, and then you go on and on today, the more it changes, the more it remains the same. The question is very simple. Maybe you can help me with a straight answer, not empty platitudes. Are you or not going to file a written submission to the Commerce Department in the U.S. to help offset the countervailing duty? No platitude, yes or no?
Minister.
Yes, it has been decided by our solicitors and those involved in the ministries that we will be filing the information with them, and we have until December the 14th to file that information.
Supplementary.
No, I'm shocked. I must compliment the minister on his born-again spirit of the truth. I have a supplementary, Mr. Speaker, and it deals with the action, the very recent action of the minister regarding the layoffs at Goodyear. Truly tales of Houdini. We belong to the second Ontario, Mr. Minister. We haven't seen you rush to protect our jobs. We've seen you go literally with cap in hand, adopting the policy of the beggar, too late, of course, to try to save those 1,500 jobs in southern Ontario. That point is well taken. However, we haven't seen any action from yourself. We've been treated as second-class citizens. Will you today make the commitment and ask Kimberly-Clark, because the workers don't believe that they're not doing okay, ask that they open their books, that a full investigation be conducted, and that as a result of keeping their cutting limits, they guarantee the jobs that are very, very well much needed in Ontario.
I think that the member knows how importantly we regard this, because this minister is meeting with both he and this group this afternoon.
Final supplementary, the member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, it's quite clear that this government has no industrial policy whatsoever for Northern Ontario. We need one that includes an infusion of major capital funds into the North to ensure that jobs are created in the North from industries that make sense there. On November 6, 1986, this legislature passed a motion by my colleague from Port Arthur calling for an independent Northern Ontario Economic Diversification Fund to be managed by Northerners that would be used to diversify the Northern economy. Will the minister respect this legislature's opinion and act to start this fund up and get funds available for the Northerners to use to generate the jobs we need across the North?
Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, this should be the last member that should ever ask a question like this. A conference held in his riding on the north, a new ODC office, the appointment of a new assistant deputy minister in his riding, plus many other things. I can't understand why you would ever ask a question like that. You are receiving a lot more in your riding than maybe in some of the other ridings.
Order. New question. Order. Order. New question. You're just wasting the members' time who wish to ask questions. Order. Order. New question, the member for Scarborough West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Although I understand the outrage of my colleagues on this issue, I have a question for the Premier. It regards your peekaboo policy on childcare issues here in the province of Ontario. It was with some surprise, Mr. Premier, that I saw you on TV talking about Ontario intending to provide operating grants to non-profit centres and moving to income testing so that assistance is targeted to more low-income families in the province of Ontario. We've been waiting for your white paper, expecting it last spring. The Ministry of Community and Social Services had nothing to say to Ontario's coalition on daycare this fall, and yet you go to BC to make this kind of announcement. Why did you go there? When are we going to see your announcement and a statement in this House? And do you really intend to delay any action for another 6 months, like the two of you are hinting out there?
Premier?
That's what you told me. Give me help.
Mr. Speaker, we were discussing so-called women's issues on the agenda at the first ministers' conference. I don't regard them as exclusively women's issues, as you know. One of the key issues is child care. As you know, Ontario has a considerable way to go to bring its policies into the line that we would like to see them, and we've been working, and the minister's been working very conscientiously on that for the last while. We also believe that we need a federal, provincial, national strategy with respect to the finance. And you'll be aware, because of your intimate knowledge of the situation, of some of the ramifications of that. I was trying to urge my colleagues, my peers, to get together on the financing aspect. I've told you, I said then, that we are moving into direct operating grants and income testing. A very major step forward, as I'm sure my honourable friend would want to stand up in this House and acknowledge. But you also recognize that it's better to go on a coordinated financial strategy with the federal government, who is at the same time wrestling with those problems. So I did suggest to the Prime Minister that we get the finance ministers together, along with the ministers of Community and Social Services and the ministers responsible for women's issues, not just the ministers responsible for Community and Social Services, to look at the financial ramifications of this question. I'm trying to urge urgency on my colleagues in that regard, but as we told you, the directions we're moving in.
Supplementary.
Well, the Premier will not be surprised to know that we support both of those initiatives. We just hadn't heard them here in this House. And you mightn't be surprised that I'm a little offended by the fact that I also hear you're all moving into a field of giving direct grants to commercial centres in this province, according to the Attorney General and yourself as you were interpreted in the press. How is it that we're hearing about that kind of a major change in initiative, which would bring nursing home policies to child care issues in this province, when we've got a select committee on health and social services, which is looking into the very expansion of that kind of assistance in commercial and private enterprise in this province?
Premier? With great respect, I don't think the honourable member is quoting the Attorney General accurately in that particular matter. And you can't give direct grants to commercial operations under the current. Well, you know, my friend from Carleton just gets so excited all the time, even when she's wrong. If you just listen for a moment, she may just want to hear the facts of the situation. We can't do that under the present financing arrangements. But what we're looking for is rationality in the financing. We recognize we have a major way to go, but I would think that you would want to stand up, and I'm delighted you stood up in this House and support the direction in which this government is moving. It is a significant step forward. I think to those people that don't understand the significance of it, and I know you do, you would want to stand up in this House and say that is a major step forward. Now, we're trying to sort out the rationality of the financing between the federal and provincial government. We're pushing as hard as we can. I apologize if my friend was offended because the statement was not made in this House as opposed to my colleagues. Well, I'm told you. You know where we are. And we're reasserting that right now. So don't get excited then about things you don't know. Celebrate the things you do know.
Final supplementary, the member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to provide the Premier with a transcript of what his Attorney General set out in BC. As the Premier knows, no province that uses the income testing route at present is using the maximum income guidelines. And I'm wondering if he will assure us that when Ontario goes this route, which we approve, that we will move to the maximum level so that the greatest number of families will receive benefit from that change in policy, which you can carry out now, by the way.
Under cap
I'm not
right
prepared
now.
to give my honourable friend any particular undertakings at this moment. What we're looking for is the maximum impact for the monies expended. As you know, and I indicated to you in this House and my colleagues in Ottawa and Vancouver, this is a major leap forward and a new method of dealing with these questions. What we also want to look at in very pragmatic terms is for the amount of extra monies expended, and believe me, it will be substantial, that we get the maximum number of new spaces. And obviously that's one of our concerns. So we're working this out with the federal members, and I think you should stop being so negative about these matters.
New question, the member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to Minister of Industry, who is proud about his job creation efforts in the province of Ontario, when over 5,000 Northern Ontario residents have lost their jobs already this year. I'd like to ask the Minister of Industry, who's so proud of this record of his government, what he's going to do for the workers of Northern Ontario, for the communities of Northern Ontario right now who are faced with these layoffs. What's he going to do, and what's he going to say? More importantly, what's he going to do today for the representatives of Long Lac, Nakina, and Terrace Bay, for the Kimberly-Clark workers who are here to see him? What's he going to tell them that he has specifically done already to help these laid-off workers?
Mr. Speaker, we are not proud of any one job is lost in the province of Ontario. We are very concerned about any of these jobs that are lost in the north. You are forgetting who caused those losses. It was the United States government and the tariff that was put on. And, of course, with some of the problems that's been caused by the Tory government in Ottawa, too. I will tell you that we will continue in our fight to fight this tariff, to have it done away with.
Supplementary.
Supplementary. Mr. Speaker, last week the Minister of Natural Resources tried to say that the tariff had nothing to do with the layoffs, that the layoffs weren't being caused by the tariffs. Now you reverse his position to the people of this province. We know that the tariffs are causing the layoffs. You can blame whoever you want, but you've got a higher obligation than that. You've got an obligation to help the workers of Northern Ontario. And what specifically are you doing right today to help those workers?
Minister.
Right there.
Mr. Speaker,
81, 82, 83, didn't work.
again, the situation we are not pleased with, the situation that has been caused by the 15% duty, and we will continue to fight that duty to reinstate those jobs in the north.
New question.
New question.
My colleagues will set up.
I know the member for Nickel Belt would like to ask a question. Good. New question.
I'd like to thank my colleagues for this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Natural Resources concerning the Lady Evelyn Smoothwater Wilderness Park located near New Liskeard in the riding of Temiskaming. The Minister will know that two lumber companies and his ministry support the linking of a road between highways 560 and 11. And the linking of that road would provide easy access to that wilderness park and destroy that whole wilderness setting of that park. will the minister withdraw his ministry's support for the completion of the Red Squirrel Road?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I can first answer the question by saying no, we will not withdraw that undertaking, simply because we're doing something there that's quite unique. We're having an environmental assessment on an area that is quite important to the people of that area and to the government of Ontario. And I must remind that honourable member that I have done something that's quite important as relates to the parks of this great province by sharing with the federal minister, Tom McMillan, a new undertaking at the Bruce Peninsula, the first federal park to take place in the province of Ontario in many, many years. So we do have a commitment to parks, and on that one where there's some impact, I was the person that instituted the environmental assessment, and I think that that's a fair way to examine that whole process.
Supplementary?
Creating an old park by killing a new one doesn't solve the problem, and it does not indicate any kind of commitment to parks in this province. The Minister of Natural Resources should know that the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, based in Switzerland, has listed this park as one of 23 endangered wilderness areas in the world. Well, the member from Cochrane North doesn't know what he's talking about.
As usual.
Mr. Speaker,
he's already proved his intelligence.
In that area, a coalition of cottagers and tourist operators and environmentalists has been trying to convince the minister that there's a lot more long-run economic benefits to tourism year after year after year than the benefits that accrue from one-time cutting of the trees that are there. Does the minister not understand how significant the long-run benefits are to tourism and how the completion of this road will destroy those benefits?
Minister?
Why will you not withdraw your support?
Mr. Speaker, of course I appreciate what the honourable member is saying, but I must reiterate, it's one of the few times in the province of Ontario that we've had an environmental assessment on the installation of a road. And all people, all interested parties are going to be heard, and I think that the assessment will be made. I think it's costing some $100,000 to participate in this environmental assessment. I think that's a real commitment to the people of Ontario that it's going to be fairly dealt with.
New question, the member for Brampton.
Mr. Speaker, I have a number of people in my riding who have been purchasing used cars, and I was somewhat taken back by the statement that was made by the president of Auto Protection Association recently in the press about the promised, this was in his annual rating of new cars press conference, he referred to Quinter's promised protection plan for used car buyers. In light of that, Mr. Minister, I'd like you to advise the House and myself and my constituents why he would say promised. I understood it was underway.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the member is referring to a plan that we have to bring in protection to people who buy used cars. Members will know that as of November the 15th, we have initiated our OMVAP program, which is a motor vehicle plan dealing with new cars. I will be proceeding, and we are under discussion now with a program for used cars.
New question. The member for Carleton Grenville, if you'll give him your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question of the Solicitor General. Mr. Minister, in 1978, I sat on the Procedural Affairs Committee that was looking into the conduct of the then Solicitor General, George Kerr. You may remember Mr. Kerr called the Crown Attorney on behalf of a constituent who was on government assistance, who was a recent immigrant and new to the country, and had on several occasions threatened suicide to Mr. Kerr's constituency office. The Premier and Mr. Kerr decided that he should resign because of the appearance of an interference of the chief law enforcement officer with our justice system. Your members insisted at that time on that committee that Mr. Kerr resign. Do you think it unreasonable for the members of the opposition to demand your resignation when you have apparently broken the law and are under police investigation for your conduct?
Minister.
I don't see the parallel whatsoever, and I do not consider it appropriate to... You already have an investigation going on under the aegis of the Attorney General, and I would suggest that the actions prompted by the Minister are somewhat premature.
Supplementary.
About a month ago, hundreds of Queen's University students were arrested and/or fined for liquor violations after a school homecoming party. The police were quick to act in this instance. Is your case really that much different, or are you above the law? And if you are not, why don't you do the honorable thing and resign?
Good question. Here.
Mr. Speaker, I stood in this House before and said that I was not resigning over this issue, and if there is any change in that, it will have to come from someone much higher than myself. The whole issue is, again, with university students. If the stats were checked a little more thoroughly as to see how many were actually charged, it would be quite different from that having us led to be relieved by the honourable member.
New question.
That's why he's upset. It should be investigated by Scotland Yard.
Order. The member for Hamilton West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. A question to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Mr. Minister, you'll remember that a year ago this legislature ordered to Committee of the Whole Bill 39 to provide for the general election of the regional chairman of Hamilton Wentworth. You may imagine my surprise when my House Leader earlier this week informed me that your House Leader was putting the blocks to the progress of this particular bill. And my further surprise, well, he was putting the boots to it, but also the blocks.
Order. Is that like putting a car up in blocks? Yeah, okay. Question, please, yeah. Question.
Mr. Speaker, in light of the intense interest in my region in the progress of this bill, which I'm sure the Minister has heard, would he clarify for me at this point in time the status of this bill and his intentions with respect to it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've told the honourable member on a number of occasions, I've supported the bill on its first and second reading, and I intend to support the bill, or Bill 39, for its third reading. But at the present time, Mr. Speaker, I do have some problems with the bill. The problems are technical, such as the method of the election for of that regional chairman, and also another technical problem, you may say. But what if a vacancy is created? How will this person be replaced? And I can cite you a number of examples, Mr. Speaker, and this is why that the bill, with your cooperation, can be rewritten very shortly.
Supplementary.
Speaker, I have no problem with any amendments to the bill. I think that the Minister is aware of that. I know that there is no date on it. That does need to be included. And I think the fastest way to proceed and get this matter resolved is to do it through Bill 39 with the amendments that are proposed. I'll be happy to sit down with his staff and work that out. But I do want to remind both himself and the House Leader opposite that a recent editorial in the Hamilton Spectator put the mood of our region very clearly. Elect our region and quit stalling. And how long do we have to wait until the civic holiday of 87 or of 88 before we see this bill? Is there a timetable, Mr. Minister, that you can suggest to us? Will we be seeing this bill before Christmas or before the end of this session at the latest?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to see the bill to be introduced for its third reading as soon as possible, and I will be talking to my House Leader. But in the meantime, I can promise you that my staff will be in touch with your office to resolve some of the technical problems that I just mentioned to you.
New question, the member for York East.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Community and Social Services. I've been receiving some constituency calls in York East concerning the announcement that the minister made, I believe it was in June, with respect to proposals and disclosure of information to adoptees. My question to the minister is, has there been any response to the proposals made, and what is the timetable, if he can give it to us, for the tabling of any legislation that is proposed?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the announcement of last June outlined the steps that this government intends to take to expand the adoption disclosure provisions in the Child and Family Services Act, a section of the Act that was not proclaimed because the reception of it was that it just simply didn't meet the need. It is our intent to bring forward that particular section before the end of this session. I hope that we can bring it forward next week. With respect to the particular concern that she expressed, we have clearly indicated in our proposal and are so intending to draft the legislation that birth parents would be consulted before any identifying information with respect to them would be released to anyone.
New question, the member for Nipissing.
Mr. Speaker, to the Solicitor General, I would like to remind the Solicitor General that in 1975, when a third-party allegation of wrongdoing was made against the then Solicitor General, an allegation he denied at that time and was subsequently proved false at that time. I'd like to draw to your attention the former Solicitor General's letter of resignation, where he states, "I am wholly conscious of the fact that there can be no suggestion of impropriety on my part that could in any way reflect upon the administration of justice and law enforcement. Under the circumstances, those former ones I mentioned, therefore I feel that I have no alternative at this time but to submit my resignation." We now have a situation where you, as the top law enforcement officer of the Crown, have admitted breaking the law, compromising the OPP, and are currently the subject of a police investigation. Why do you think you are not only above the law, but above the integrity of this legislature by carrying on in your post?
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member will check the record, I did not make the admission to having broken the law. I made the admission to the act that was a challenge toward me, and there is a difference. It's up to other persons to determine whether or not the law was actually broken or not.
Supplementary.
The example I read you, the former Attorney General, or the Solicitor General, did not admit to either. In fact, he flatly denied it and was proven innocent.
And the supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On November the 19th, the Premier of the province was quoted in the Kingston Whig Standard as saying, quote, "Keys made a mistake that I regret very much." The Premier went on to say, "I don't think he thought through the consequences." I don't know whether the Solicitor General today is aware of the consequences. In 1975, also a quote that I gave you before, also, the member from Brent, Oxford, Norfolk, then leader of your party, said, quote, "I pledge integrity in government," end of quote. By remaining as the Solicitor General under these circumstances, you are making a mockery of this legislature and the legal system of this province. And I would ask you again, out of respect for the law, for this legislature, and any kind of sense of honor, when are you going to resign?
Mr. Speaker, I suggest that any of the consequences, quotation marks, or outcome shall await the hearing that has been conducted by the Attorney General. The investigation, if I stand correct, the investigation under the Attorney General's aegis. And once that has been completed and made known to the House, then the, quote, circumstances and the outcome will be known.
New question, the member for Beaches Woodbine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Mr. Premier, I have now received a negative answer from the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations to the many petitions I have tabled asking for provincial intervention to protect the thousands of residents in the neighborhood of the Greenwood Racetrack from the loss of their traditional Sunday respite from racetrack activities which disrupt the neighborhood. Mr. Premier, in view of your avowed commitment to open government, do you think that a decision to allow Sunday racing in the midst of a large residential area should be made by a one-sided government-appointed agency, the Ontario Racing Commission, which provides no opportunity for the residents gravely affected by their decision to present their views on its impact on their quality of life and to have their views considered when it is making such a decision?
Premier.
Speaker, to the honourable member, I know, as one who spent a great deal of time in opposition, I know how disappointing it is when the rest of the world doesn't agree with me in that case or you in this particular case. The minister has dealt with this issue on a number of occasions. You put your case forcefully and well in this House. I guess there happens to be a difference of opinion on this matter, and I say to my honourable colleague that I support the minister's handling of the issue.
Supplementary.
Mr. Premier, I was asking you, did you support the principle of a government-appointed agency refusing to have public hearings on an issue that affects thousands of residents? This is the real issue. And Mr. Quinter has not dealt with that either.
Premier.
Honourable member, we may want to put this under environmental assessment or some other kind of a consolidated joint hearings or something like that to go on. I mean, frankly, if we followed the NDP view on everything, nothing would ever get done around here. And so occasionally decisions have to be made by someone or other. That's a duly constituted body to discuss that. If you can bring an act into this House, if you want to bring a private member's bill into this House, we can have a thorough go-around and discussion in this House. You have alternatives. I'm sorry that the honourable member doesn't support the decision that the government and its agencies have made in this regard, but I think he's handled it as well as to be done under the current circumstances. I mean, what you're asking is every time you disagree with a board, agency, or commission ruling in this House to bring it in here and ask me to unilaterally overturn it. So you want a hearing on everything. Every single thing that happens that you disagree with, you want a hearing. I mean, I understand the point of view, perhaps, but if you take it to its logical extension, my honourable friend would realize that no one could govern under those circumstances, even the NDP.
New question, the member for Brampton.
Recently in my constituency office...
Go ahead.
I think the people of Brampton are interested in this question.
Yes.
Recently in my constituency office, Mr. Speaker...
Question is to which minister?
I had a number of nurses who visited with me, and they were interested in setting up a practice with emphasis on wellness and education of wellness. I'm not sure whether this should go to the Minister of Health or should go to the Minister in charge of the disabled, but I noticed that in his recent white paper and his report, he referred in one of the specifics to the question of wellness, and I would like to find out, we've not heard anything about it since, I'd like to find out just what steps have been taken along those lines.
To the Minister of Health?
No, to the Minister Minister connected with the disabled. I beg your pardon, seniors. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, seniors. I meant seniors.
The Minister.
I'm glad that the members opposite are as interested as my colleague is in wellness, Mr. Speaker. One of the 5 initiatives that were outlined in our new agenda, which is a policy paper for services for seniors, does make reference to that in general terms. Specifically, we are hoping that the federal government will join with us in promoting various programs that will stress illness prevention and health promotion for seniors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
New question. the member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, a question for the Minister of Community and Social Services. It has to do with the Premier's comments when he was in Vancouver last week, talking about changes in funding for childcare that's been alluded to earlier, and the funding that could take place for grants to centres and income testing. Turns out that people in the know this week in your ministry and in the Ministry of Health and in Intergovernmental Affairs didn't know anything about what the Premier was talking about. Could the Minister now tell the people of Ontario the details of this new policy, or in fact is it something that is only supposed to be known 3,000 miles away when the Premier is out of town?
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me make it clear to my honourable friend that the Minister responsible for the Women's Directorate and the Minister responsible for delivering daycare services had many and long consultations with the Premier as to exactly what he was going to be saying in Vancouver. There was no surprises whatsoever. The honourable member will be well aware of the fact, because I have responded to his and other questions in this House, that two of the initiatives that we would like to move on is in the area of direct grants and income testing. And the member will be well aware of the fact that we have indicated that we want to do that because the Premier has clearly said previously that we want to move daycare in Ontario away from a welfare service to a public service. And these are two of the initiatives which are going to enable us to do that. The member will also be aware of the fact that the Attorney General, with respect to pay equity, has said clearly that some daycare centres will not directly be affected by the new legislation. And one of the ways we want to assist daycare workers in improving their wages is through the mechanism of direct grants. And the member will further be aware of the fact that we have clearly indicated that we want to be able to provide some assistance to the lower middle income group who can now no longer cannot qualify for the present subsidies. And by using income testing, we will be able to do that. So all of the initiatives which the Premier indicated that this province wants to move on and requested support from the federal government are totally consistent with everything we've been saying for the last several months.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, they haven't said much. The paper and the other things just haven't happened. Let's deal with one specific aspect of what it is you're talking about. Given the fact that you're talking about income testing as a new direction, and given that current cap requirements have certain aspects to it, what will you do about children in commercial centres where 40% of the province's spaces are located?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, obviously that's one of the concerns that have to be addressed, and one of the concerns that my Premier raised with the Prime Minister. As my honourable friend has just indicated, approximately 45% of the licensed supervised daycare spaces in this province are in the commercial sector. So that if we're going to make some kinds of moves, we have to be very cognizant of those spaces. There is no way overnight we can create roughly 50,000 spaces to replace the ones that are currently in the commercial sector. And so therefore, being cognizant of that, we are trying to discover what the federal government's intentions are with respect to this area, so that we can incorporate those intentions into our overall policy program.
New question, the member for Welland Thorold.
I have a question to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, and it relates to the reply which he gave to my colleague from Algoma earlier this week when he talked about the inability of tavern owners, to get liability insurance. May I remind you of what you said according to Hansard? You said, I disagree with the member when he says they will operate without any liability insurance. I am not aware of any tavern owner in Ontario who is operating without liability insurance. Mr. Minister, subsequent to that comment by you, Mr. John Guthrie, the Executive Director of the Hotel Motel Association, has informed me that there are at least 1,000 taverns and bars in this province who are operating without liability insurance, and fully one-third of all the licensed establishments, more than 50% of sales of alcohol beverage, are going bare without insurance. very simple question to you, Mr. Minister. How do you explain your colossal ignorance of what is taking place in this province with regard to insurance?
Good question. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, when I talked about insurance, the point I was making that people that were calling up to my ministry and calling the Ontario liability insurers, there was not one of them that couldn't get insurance. Now, what had happened, what we had talked about was the two major problems facing the insurance industry. One of them was availability, and the other one was affordability. We have addressed the availability problem, and I stand by my statement that there isn't a policyholder that cannot get insurance. The affordability problem is one that is still with us, and we know that, and we are addressing that. And that is why we are implementing many of the reforms that we're doing through Slater's recommendations and through some of the legislation that we are bringing forward.
Supplementary?
Mayor, remind the minister that's not what he said. He said he didn't know of any tavern that was going without him, and he didn't believe my colleague that they were, in fact, operating without insurance.
Supplementary
I wonder, yes, by way of supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the minister if he would contact Mr. Guthrie and report back to the House on the numbers that, in fact, are operating without insurance. And I want to ask you, don't you realize the risk that this puts people at who are patronizing those establishments that don't have insurance? And don't you think you have an obligation to see that affordable insurance is available, whether auto or liability, so that people of this province can all have adequate coverage?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the member will know that that is exactly the problem that we are addressing. We had to address the first problem of availability. That was something when people were coming to us and saying that we could not get insurance at any price. We have now addressed that, and we are now working on the problem of affordability.
New question? Is that the member for Algoma?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question to the Minister of Health. A question to the Minister of Health in regard to the Provincial Auditor's report. On pages 56 and 57, the Auditor said the method of allocation of funds to health agencies is not equitable and doesn't facilitate the delivery of legislated public health programs. That the present procedure, even with the enrichment funding of limiting annual increases to individual health agencies to a fixed percentage of their prior year's approved budget, has failed adequately and to provide existing agencies with the funding they require. In response to this, can the minister indicate what the Ministry of Health intends to do to help public health agencies in rural and northern and eastern Ontario to be able to catch up to their counterparts in urban and metropolitan Ontario so that they will be able to meet their legislated responsibilities and to provide the health programs that are taken for granted in urban Ontario?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Auditor's remarks are based on the differentials between various areas in our province, and some of those have developed with respect to some decisions that were made by various boards at particular times in terms of how many funds they allocated. I can agree with the honourable gentleman. I agree with the auditor that there are differentials in the manner in which money is spent, but there is some independence of determination at the local level through those boards because of the autonomous nature of those boards, which will reflect on the level of spending that is ultimately attained. Bearing that in mind, there are programs. The member asked me what we were doing, Mr. Speaker, currently to help deal with that. We do have some augmentation of programs which will help to assist to bring some of those expenditures more in line. I think that I would like to also advise the members, Mr. Speaker, that even though the question was put in terms of or in the context of differentials as between rural and urban and northern, eastern and central Ontario as opposed to some of our urban centres, that there are some differentials as well that exist between urban-centred boards. We have taken the opportunity of addressing the question of funding to the Association of Boards, and we're working with them to see what might be done and accomplished. But I can tell the honourable gentleman and the Speaker, through you, to the public, that we have a large number of problems that affect the question of unequal distribution of allocation of funds. But we are working at that with the Boards Association.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in that long and rather convoluted answer, the minister admitted that even with the enrichment, there is no way that an agency in a rural part of the province that started off at a lower base prior to the across-the-board percentage increases over the years is ever going to catch up unless this ministry provides additional funding. Does the minister agree that in parts of Northern Ontario it is difficult to attract professionals and to provide programs, and so that those agencies should have the funds to be able to pay more in order to be able to compete in hiring, at least? And if they don't have as much money, not only can they not pay more, they can't pay as much, and they're never going to be able to attract the professionals they need.
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, we take a look at the disparities in ability to attract professional assistance when programs are submitted to us. We have looked on occasion to several areas of the province. In fact, I think the Kenora Health Unit has submitted some programs which we look at in order to try and attract some professionals, just as one example. But I know that in general applies across the province, that we look to provide some funding which may attract those people to go to areas that are not well stocked with professional people. I can tell you as well that in terms of supplying services in certain areas, speech pathology, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, there appears to be an increasing demand for services which are not always met, just particularly with an increase in the stipend that is available to be paid through those health units. And I know that the honourable gentleman would want to agree with me on that particular point. But I can tell the members here and the honourable gentleman who asked the question that we are trying to find ways of helping to provide extra services where services are required, but there are some things which we cannot do, and that is we cannot make decisions at the local level in relation to the percentages which the contribution towards the 25% or whatever percentage that the local board must itself get from the local municipalities. That also has an effect.
New question. The member for Ottawa West.
My question is for the Minister of Correctional Services. In view of the fact that the ministry has been pursuing a program of establishing group homes for young offenders in residential neighborhoods across the province, and in view of the fact that he's doing so without a formal set of guidelines for community consultation prior to setting up these homes, and further in view of the fact that without this essential prior consultation, neighborhoods, including those in Ottawa West, such as Golden Avenue and Napulan Avenue, were 75 neighbors who were surprised and angered by the sudden and arbitrary approach have petitioned the minister. Will the minister tell us if and when he plans to establish, publish, and follow guidelines for consultation with neighborhoods that have proven so successful in the ministers of Health and Community and Social Services?
Minister.
The set of guidelines that currently were prepared by the previous government under known as group homes are followed to a large extent in establishing open custody facilities. And they do use first of all, to make sure that the criteria of zoning is appropriate for the municipality, and to get the assurance from planning officers that such is appropriate before any establishment of such homes. And this has been working extremely well in the opening of at least 7 new homes in the past year alone.
Supplementary.
I can tell the minister that he is not following the guidelines, and you haven't got published guidelines for your ministry, unlike Health and ComSoc. Can the minister tell us how many more group homes for young offenders he's planning to establish throughout the province in residential neighborhoods, and in what cities and towns is he prepared to promise us that he will not support any plans for such homes until his guidelines for community consultation are in place and are rigorously adhered to by the sponsoring agencies?
Minister.
In accordance with the need for open custody facilities, we'll continue to open them in those areas and cities where the greatest need arises and where there's the desire on the part of sponsoring agencies to open them. And we have opened, as I said earlier, a number of them in eastern Ontario this past year. We've opened one in Brockville, we've opened one in Cornwall, and we are certainly just in the process of opening one in Ottawa and then looking at other areas as well across the province. Many cities, wherever the need is there, and as long as they're in accordance with the legal bylaws of the municipality, that's the major basis in which they'll be open, and hopefully with a great deal of support from the communities and the liaison committees that are established with each home as it's open.
New question, the member for Etobicoke.
The chairman of Management Board, in relation to his role as the coordinator of inventory control for all of the ministries. Can the minister inform the House how various ministries could, according to the provincial auditor, of a sample of 1,300 recorded assets, only 230 assets could not be located, or how the Ministry of Natural Resources indicated that 3,500 assets costing approximately $1.7 million could not be located in its 1985 inventory. Can the minister tell us where have all of those fridges and stoves and television sets gone to? Is it an inventory problem or is it a police problem? Has he investigated?
Mr. Speaker, I really don't know. We have, from Management Board, sent a letter to all deputies indicating that we require an up-to-date inventory and a careful assessment of what's missing and an indication of where it's gone and where it might be recovered. There is some indication, I think you'll notice in the auditor's report, that he indicated the clear indication that went out the day before the government changed. So we're expecting a report from the deputies.
Time for oral questions has expired, I'm sorry to say.